As I go through the presentation today, I'll be providing kind of like a briefing on where we are with the implementation of the 2019 Sustainability Plan, which is a decennial plan. So it is intended to be updated every 10 years, and the 2024 annual report represents the midway point of that implementation. So it's a good time to receive feedback. Throughout the process, I'll also be referring to other plans that we have across the city, both plans that the Office of Sustainability manages the implementation of, but also plans that are external to our office. A lot of the progress that we see as it relates to the sustainability plan itself and those actions and those goals happens outside of our team and really relies on collaboration with other agencies and sometimes even state or federal partners or nonprofit organizations external to city government. So with that, I'll kind of walk through, I think everyone's obviously like familiar with our office, but just to provide a high level overview of our work, again, we catalyze climate action citywide. We support education, engagement, and collaboration, and more thinking about how we support positive climate behavior change in our work, and we track and report. And so we track progress on the city's goals in our sustainability plan, our climate action plan, our disaster preparedness plan, and we also participate in voluntary tracking, where cities can report their information to different things like the Carbon Disclosure Project, CDP, or ACEEE, and that basically ranks us in comparison to other cities. And then we also have tracked a lot of information for the Lead for Cities certification that my colleague Amy Gilder-Busati led. So, yes.
So are you the specific department that's responsible for the city's sort of official sort of reporting out on these programs?
Yes, we are. We are. And again, a lot of the reporting out that we do relies on information from other agency partners, including DPW, DGS, BCRP. So we kind of are reporting out and aggregating all the information and updates that we get from other agencies. As a reminder, kind of our work falls into these three buckets that include climate and community resilience, which include the implementation of our plans, environmental protection and regulation, which include the promulgation of the National Flood Insurance Program, the Critical Area Management Program, and the Forest Conservation Program. And then everything else kind of falls into our program management and policy implementation bucket, which includes our Commission on Sustainability, our Green Schools grants, and some of the pilot work, as well as the research and analysis or the data analysis work that we do. The 2019 Sustainability Plan is organized into 5 sections that include community, human-made systems, climate and resilience, nature in the city, and economy. So in the update today, I will zero in on specific pieces or specific actions to give everyone a sense of like where we are. And we do have some summary numbers to share in terms of where we are in the implementation of those actions. So again, 23 topics, 78 measures, 70 strategies, and in total 244 actions. So we have 244 actions in this plan, which we actively work to collaborate with agencies on to implement. But between our CAP and DP3, as well as other climate-related plans across the city, we're aiming to implement or move progress on roughly 600 different actions. So a lot of that progress is incremental. And just a reminder, the sustainability plan was really built on the foundation with equity and environmental justice principles in mind, really looking at it through an equity lens. We really do try to ensure that we are implementing the plan in an equitable manner, especially in terms of ensuring that we're not pushing forward programs or policies that have negative impacts on any populations. Again, in terms of the sustainability plan, this is kind of like a breakdown of the different sections and chapters. When looking at all 244 actions in the plan, so when we look at those, roughly 92% of those actions have reached a stage of early or beyond in terms of implementation. And I'll just skip to this slide because we measure each of those 244 actions on this 5-point scale. I will acknowledge that how we're interpreting the progress that we're hearing from agencies into where it lands on the scale, that's very subjective. But generally, those actions that we are interpreting as being advanced or implemented and ongoing have some more measurable, tangible progress which has happened. And oftentimes when something is in early or mid stages, it's kind of, it can be anything from kind of like initial coordination efforts that are going on, or even particular policy or legislation that is passed to initiate progress. So 92% of our actions have reached either early stages or beyond, and roughly 71% have reached this mid-stage point or beyond. For the implemented and ongoing, so these are actions that we really see as having been accomplished or achieved, but I do have to acknowledge and be very transparent. Sometimes you can see progress on something, and you can also see regression, or you can see kind of like reversal, especially when we consider all the federal defunding that's happening in the climate and environmental space. And so I want to highlight that because we do try to be very transparent about when there are setbacks that we encounter as well. So with 11% of the actions kind of reaching this stage, that's roughly 26 actions of the 244. In the sustainability plan itself, each of the chapter is, again, organized or kind of like laid out to have some introductory narratives text that lists the particular section that it's in, the chapter name, in this case, community resilience, community preparedness. And then we have strategies and actions, and I highlight that because that's how I'll provide some updates today. So the strategies are numbered, and then the actions are numbered as well. And so I thought it was most helpful to provide updates on the very specific actions and some examples of those updates, and happy to provide any additional detail based on kind of like the high level information that we'll go through today. Each of the chapters also maps to sustainable development goals. And so in our annual reports, typically, we are outlining those according to the 5 sections that the plan is organized by, and we provide both stories and data. So we provide narrative text in terms of where certain updates on programs are, and then we do try to provide certain measures and metrics to give an example of progress. All of the 244 actions, again, as I mentioned, are measured on that 4-point scale divided by the chapter name in the action number. And so we do update this matrix on an annual basis for actions that have actually moved or progressed. And just to also share, the city's finance department has a performance management process for agencies. So they assign performance measures to all the budget service areas within each agency. And so for our service, we have 5 performance management measures. Each of them relates to kind of like different areas of work. It relates to our engagement of both the general public as well as city agency staff on climate literacy in particular. And then 2 of the actions relate to progress made on implementation of both the Climate Action Plan and the Sustainability Plan. And one of our measures relates to the Food Policy and Planning Division, which is in our same budget service area. I'll stop there just to see if there are any questions before I get into some of the specific actions.
Can you just go back a slide?
Yep.
So these are the 5 that you're being measured, your office is being measured on?
Yes, it is.
Is there, do you have, how many, is there a distribution list somewhere that shows all of the agencies or entities who are assigned performance goals? I mean, I guess I'm trying to figure out who in the city is responsible for moving the goals forward. And obviously, it's a lot of people, a lot of goals. Can you give some perspective on that?
When you say the goals, do you mean specifically the goals in the sustainability
Yes.
plan? Yes, that's a fair question. So in our office, we're responsible for certain goals in the sustainability plan, and we do kind of like assign specific actions to certain agencies and or other partners, acknowledging that certain things are just outside of our sphere of control. And so we work really closely, again, with all the agencies to move it forward. But I would say in terms of ensuring that there's ultimate facilitation to move towards actions on these goals, that is our responsibility as an office. and to figure out like how we can overcome hurdles to that implementation.
So is there, is there overlap between the tasks in the plan that have been assigned or adopted by agencies and these Department of Finance performance measures with respect to those things? So it's like, are they the same things or are they different things?
Yeah, what is in the sustainability plan, those goals and actions are that was developed in 2019. This process from the Department of Finance is a more recent process. So there isn't always direct like alignment or continuity, but when each agency or service or budget service area is asked to develop their measures. And they work with like the administration on kind of like refining them. And so we were able to like determine what these measures ultimately were. So we thought these measures were the best reflection of our work, considering so much of that work is dependent on collaboration and coordination with other partners. So,
And then on this slide in particular, I mean, it seems like you're exceeding, I'm just trying to look at the lines. It looks like in the first one, you're essentially exceeding your target. In the second one, exceeding the target. And the third one, substantially, by a factor of 3, I guess, exceeding the target. And then also in all 4 of them. Is that right? Am I reading that correctly?
yeah,
just
I
wanna make
think, yes, we do typically exceed our engagement numbers quite significantly, and we are generally conservative in that, in what our targets will be, because we just don't want to be too ambitious about how likely we are to meet those engagement numbers. But there has been a steady increase in our engagement and our ability to connect with residents and do that engagement robustly. And then, yes, in particular for the implementation or for the targets for the sustainability plan, we do typically overshoot that when it comes to implementation. But we are conservative and we aim for 5%. And that's 5% of the overall 244 actions that are progressed in some way. And so we just aim for a more conservative number because we just don't know what will happen year to year.
And then the last item, I guess the number is almost, the differences are really so immaterial, but $154,000 is not very much money to invest in anything. And I guess I'm wondering, what does that item mean? We're investing $154,000 in the city's food system.
Yeah,
Is that the total investment? I'm just not sure I know what the HFPA funds is.
Yes, so the Healthy Food Priority Area Funds, and Chris, let me know if you want to chime in. It supports the implementation of the Food Policy and Planning Division's goals, and they have 5 primary goals that they're working towards, including the dissemination of food boxes, online SNAP. I don't remember, I can't remember the rest off the top of my head, but I think the number, I think boiling down progress for any division or team into these measures sometimes is a bit of a challenging task, and other measures may not have been fully reflective of the progress for the Food Policy and Planning Division, and so this was determined to be the best measure in terms of the dollars invested. So.
There's specifically a grant program that they operate on an annual basis. The amount changes from year to year, but it's a grant program to community partners.
Yeah.
Do you happen to know, is there a dedicated, is it like the bag fees going to is there a dedicated funding source that goes into the Healthy Food Priority Area funds?
No, but we would love for you to dedicate funds to no, there's unfortunately right now there's no dedicated funding source for the Healthy Food Priority Areas, but those are funds that are provided in perpetuity unless one year it's something changes, but it has been increased over time. But that was actually awarded through an enhancement proposal several years ago due to the engagement with the Food Policy and Planning's their engagement with food equity advisors, and that fund was intended to actually provide program dollars for that work. So we don't actually access those funds in the Office of Sustainability. It really is specifically for the Food Policy and Planning Division. But yeah, we do acknowledge that more dedicated revenue sources that support like programmatic implementation for sustainability and climate focused goals could be really beneficial.
Yeah, I came into this conversation late, so I apologize, but it's thinking, because there are ways we are also funding work in healthy food priority areas, like the tax credit for supermarkets going into a food desert. So like, there might be a better reflection of the city's investment, but yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you for highlighting that. That's a great point. I think finance is in a process of like engaging agencies to revisit their measures now. And so, yeah, it's a fair point. Yeah, no problem. Any other questions on measures? So just to get into some specific strategies and actions, again, for the different sections, I highlighted the specific chapters these strategies and actions are in the number of the strategy and or action. It's probably not very relevant to you, but when you're looking at the plan, that is how the plan is organized. So I just kind of wanted to refer back to that. And so for our first strategy and action in the greenhouse gas reduction chapter of the sustainability plan, we really aim to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And part of that we see as accomplished by updating our climate action plan, which is a roadmap to emissions reduction by 2030 by 60%. And so our climate action plan was released in 2024, and in the first year of implementation, we were able to make progress on roughly 10% of the actions, and it's around 80 actions in that climate action plan. We also, in 2021, I believe, Mayor Scott committed the city to being carbon neutral by 2045. And so we're actively working towards progress on that by implementing the CAP.
Excuse me, I'm
Yes.
curious, where do we stand right now as far as reduction? What's the actual number?
Yes, so based on 2020 data, and I do have to acknowledge that 2020 is an outlier year because it is a pandemic year, and so we don't know that the reductions we saw then will be maintained, but we saw a 23.2% reduction in our emissions compared to our 2007 baselines. And a lot of that was due to the reduction in transportation emissions. And so over the past decade plus, most of the emission reductions that we've seen in the city have been due to the transition from coal as a source of electricity to natural gas. And so natural...
At the point of generation?
Yes. So it's
Not here in town?
No. Yeah, we don't have those, no, thankfully. Natural gas is less carbon intensive, and so a lot of those reductions have been due to that. And so admittedly, and I acknowledge, I think there's more work to be done. Roughly 64% of our emissions across the city are due to buildings or stationary sources. And so there's a lot of work to be done there to support building decarbonization. We'll see a lot of progress with that with the implementation of the Maryland Building Energy Performance Standards, or the BEPS legislation. But there's definitely more work that we have to do to ensure that more of those reductions are actually due to emission reductions generated within the city. So I talked about the climate action plan, and that plan depended on a lot of engagement across the city. And I think we did provide a briefing on the climate action plan when it was approved to the Planning Commission and the Sustainability Commission. But that yielded 6 sections that include buildings, electricity, transportation, waste, nature-based solutions, and other actions. Transportation makes up roughly 22 or 23% of our emissions across the city. So that's all the on-road emissions. And one of the things that we decided to do, based on a lot of feedback and insights we heard from residents when we were doing engagement around the CAP, was to actually do dual inventories. Because when we're actually looking at our greenhouse gas emissions inventory, that does not include air quality. It doesn't include air pollutants and all the criteria air pollutants that are tracked to really determine air quality specifically. But that is what residents care about, is air quality. So we are going to, for the first time, based on 2023 and 2024 data, do a dual inventory that looks at both greenhouse gas emissions as well as air pollutants. So we're really excited about that. And we'll have some updated, we'll have more recent data to determine where we are on meeting our emissions goals at that time. Community preparedness, strategy 3, action 2, that really focused on increasing community awareness around natural hazards and climate change, And a lot of that particular action was focused on growing our Community Resiliency Hub program. And so over the past few years, we've been able to grow to a total of 22 Community Resiliency Hubs across the city currently. And we've also refined our model for Community Resiliency Hubs to provide like a better definition of what it is that we mean when we say a facility or a site or partner is running or managing a Community Resiliency Hub. And so we have like a tiered system now where that gives the public or as well as us a better sense of like which hubs are able to provide which services and resources to their community members. And we also secured a $7.3 million grant from one of our previous colleagues worked on to provide solar and battery backup to 16 Community Resiliency Hub sites across the city. And so we are working on implementing that grant now and really looking forward to getting those solar systems installed. Yes.
Geographically, how does community resilience helps?
Yep. So on the map, sorry, it was yeah. So generally, when it comes to like certain parts of East and West Baltimore, there had been a lack of like mini hubs, and you do see that cluster kind of around like downtown-ish, a little further, kind of not quite South Baltimore, but I guess that is east, but more so southeast, where you have the Door, Banner Neighborhoods, and UA House. So we have like seemingly clusters of some hubs that seem to pop up, but we have definitely wanted to have more hubs, particularly in West Baltimore. So.
Is there an overlay that shows areas which would be most prone to environmental issues, and with that map overlaid?
No, and we don't have that specific map, but we do have in our disaster preparedness and planning project vulnerability assessments like across the city. And so I think, yes, if we were to overlay kind of like flood risk along with heat risk, along with other climate risk and map, we could definitely do that. Generally, we are aiming to partner with hubs that serve low income or disadvantaged communities or environmental justice communities. And most of our hubs are in areas that particularly reflect those challenges. But yeah, we can definitely work on that type of analysis. And
Just be very interesting to see
Yeah.
where are the holes.
Yes, and we're actually trying to develop a definition for Baltimore that really defines what a climate vulnerable community is, and we want to use that type of data and those types of risks to inform that. So in our climate and resilience section, strategy 1, action 1, the strategy is to review regulatory codes and implement collaborative programs to protect vulnerable residents, and the action is enhancing the city's floodplain regulations. And so Baltimore has one of the strictest or the strictest floodplain code in the state of Maryland. And right now we are working on making some improvements to that code based on a community assistance visit done by FEMA last year. And it's basically an audit of the National Flood Insurance Program and our implementation here in the city. And through that process, they were able to provide us advice on instances where we could be improving our compliance with the code, both in terms of city government operations, but also in terms of how we can ensure that aspects of our code better align with some of the national floodplain regulations guidelines. We don't know what will happen at the federal level with some of these like flood insurance and some of these issues, but our floodplain code will still stand regardless because those are local codes that development projects have to comply with.
Can I just
yes.
ask you, I'm sorry, the city's floodplain coordinator works for your division or elsewhere?
Floodplain manager is in our division, yes.
In your division?
Yes. And this year we are actually working on releasing or drafting, I should say, the city's first watershed master plan. And so The impetus behind updating or creating this plan was really to receive a higher rating under the community rating system from FEMA. So CRS, as jurisdictions that participate in this, our residents or policyholders are able to get up to a 25% discount on their flood insurance policies. And so if we can get a higher rating, we can give our policyholders here in the city more of a discount. And so the next class up provides a 30% discount. And so we're working on some of the prerequisites to achieve that higher rating. So, and I think it'll be once we get to the point of having some details drafted on the watershed master plan, we would definitely love to bring that towards to the planning commission. And sorry. Deputy Mayor.
Do you, off the top of your head, do you happen to know if the peer counties around us, if they're lower or the same, also the highest?
We are the highest in the state.
But do you know if Anne Arundel County is lower class or they're the same? If you know,
We have the highest class in the state for the community rating system.
Right. So do you know how we compare? So do you know if Anne Arundel County is also the same tier or they're lower?
I don't know I don't know their specific classification or how they participate in the community rating system, but yeah, so I don't know those specifics. So, all right. This is just some additional detail on the floodplain regulations and kind of like where some of that information is. And with the watershed master plan, one of the goals there is really to figure out how we can support the implementation of projects that support flood mitigation as well as adaptation for areas that we know are flood prone. In our human-made systems section, the nature in the city chapter, we wanted to, one of the strategies is to increase the acreage of maintained and protected land. And one of the actions under that is developing a workforce training program for residents to restore and protect natural resources that lead residents that lead to employment while avoiding displacement. And so there were a few updates under here that we will be highlighting in our annual report, including some of the work done by Camp Small in their Wood Reuse Core initiative. And so they've been doing a lot of workforce development and training with Sean Preston and the folks at Camp Small. They have quite a bit of heavy-duty equipment, and we even took our team to do like a workshop, a woodworking workshop there once. But they're able to do quite a bit of training to help early kind of professionals develop some of those woodworking skills, and then also supporting other kind of like various actions related to workforce development, particularly in this domain, include Clean Core. The Audubon Society has supported partnerships to train folks to get skills in green stewardship, as well as the National Aquarium. And in our office, we're also not necessarily specifically related to nature in the city, but we do employ youth sustainability leaders and have developed a robust experiential learning program for young people interested in getting into the environmental space. Yes. And then community, healthy school environments. In this chapter, strategy 2 was providing a welcoming environment for students, faculty, and families, and increasing access to nutritious foods. And the action here is funding a community school coordinator in every school. And so this was achieved several years ago where the school system did let us know. They had a community school coordinator in, I think it's actually 151 schools now. But in addition to that, the Baltimore City school system, now with their sustainability manager, they have their own sustainability plan, which was released in 2023, and they provide, and they're getting in the habit of releasing annual sustainability reports. So I wasn't able to detail all of the progress that the school system has made here, but I did include a link to their annual report if there's other details which folks are interested in. But we do provide green schools grants to schools across the city. And in 2024, we were able to award $46,000 in grants from the Office of Sustainability. And again, there's more detail about the specific progress that the school system has made in their annual report. And I'm sorry, that slide should have been deleted. And then the last one is the economy section. So I'm sorry for these typos. I threw this presentation together quickly, but it was building the capacity of local manufacturers and entrepreneurs through access to resources, technical and financial assistance in support of policy and investment. That action really, one of those actions focused on building the capacity of Made in Baltimore. Over the years, Made in Baltimore has supported several rounds of training and funding for local makers and creators to be featured in the Made in Baltimore lookbook, as well as created their standing year-round store at Harbor Place, and continues to really be a driver of local entrepreneurs to grow and expand their business and gain the skills needed to do so across the city. And then transportation, so prioritizing regional transportation coordination. And a lot of this progress, we kind of point to the governor's commitment to the Red Line, even though we know kind of like the exact details of that are beyond our control as a city, but we do think that's a positive step in the right direction. And then just some other details that'll be captured in our annual report include progress on urban agriculture. So when asked about the Healthy Food Priority Fund, this is some of the use of those funds when it comes to a $15,000 grant provided to the Black Butterfly Teaching Farm in South Baltimore. And then also, I'm sorry, that was the value of the produce sowed, but some of these farms and urban gardens are supported with those funds. And again, we highlight progress both driven by work done in our office and in the city, but also led by other partners. And then there's some general transportation updates here as well, including the e-bike vouchers that DOT awarded or provided to 50 residents up to $2,000 to receive rebates on the purchase of an e-bike, and some of the Red Line open house events that the state hosted. Just to share, earlier this year, we did do a briefing on kind of like progress on zero waste. And so as a part of that process, we really pulled out all the specific actions related to waste and waste reduction to do a more detailed, to provide more details on specific progress of those actions. And so here, like, you see the strategy and the action and the specific measurable indications of progress. Just highlighting that in case there's interest in doing a deeper dive on any particular topic. I did a high-level overview today, just because we don't have time to go over all 244 actions, but happy to provide additional information on any other work. And I think one of our key pieces in the office is really that meaningful, authentic engagement. And so we saw the engagement numbers, and that's a huge measure of our work and how we are making progress. So I will stop there, and thank you again.
Well, I want to thank you very much for doing this. I know that this was a little bit of a late request, so especially with that, really exceptional job of organizing this. I do have a couple of quick questions, and others may. The sustainability plan is adopted by both the Sustainability Commission and the Planning Commission? I'm only asking that because I'm relatively new to this commission.
Yeah, at the time for the 2019 sustainability plan, I don't recall if it was approved by the Planning Commission or not. I don't, that might have been before my time. Do you recall, Chris? I don't think it is required to be approved by the Planning Commission, but it does have to be kind of like given the green light by the administration and have some formal.
If you could just clarify, I mean,
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
sure.
I just
Yeah,
don't
no
know
problem.
the exact. The other thing I wanted to ask you, and you certainly don't have to answer it now, but I would like to know, regardless of the answer to my prior question, what you think this commission can do to help you advance all of these goals. I mean, sustainability touches everything. You can see you've got, it's all over the place, and some of it is obviously things that we deal with regularly, some of it maybe less so, but I think the commission is interested broadly in all of these things. We have broad responsibility for the planning department. So if you would think about ways in which the commission can be helpful to you. Sure. And a more specific version of that would be to ask, are there particular priorities or initiatives where you think, I guess I would ask you to think about it in terms of return on investment, where a modest additional investment might yield a higher than expected return, so that we can focus limited resources on high ROI type items. So I'm asking that question in a very theoretical way because I don't actually know how to apply it, but you probably do. So if you could think about those two things and maybe get back to us with some thoughts, that would really be helpful to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are working with a consultant now who's working on some climate budgeting and climate financing work for us through our requirement to produce a study and report on a resilience authority. And so we are happy to have the findings of that report shared with the Planning Commission as well.
Yeah, I'm not looking for us to complicate things unnecessarily. I'm just looking for ways in which we can be, A, better informed and be as helpful as possible.
Definitely. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions? Mr. McCoach.
Thanks very much. It's very comprehensive. My question is really related to items we'll be hearing later this afternoon. In the staff report for, what is it, item 25064, the zoning changes, the staff report describes some real significant impacts to open space and in the R7, R8 districts. And so I'm just wondering, is that cross purposes to what your agency is focused on?
Yes, definitely. We are interested in expanding and protecting open spaces and green spaces, particularly forests across the city. But some of again, it is definitely a value of ours, but the control and the influence that we're able to exercise in that regard is quite limited. So I don't know the specifics of this particular project to say kind of like, I don't think we have much authority in this particular instance or case. Most of our authority relates to the environmental regulations that we enforce through the permit approval processes. So outside of that, a lot of it is more so engaging and educating, whether it's our city agency partners or the public in terms of those stated values in our plans and aligning with certain guidance documents such as our Green Network Plan to fulfill the vision that like is laid out there. So does that, I know that's
kind of,
okay.
You have an administrative role, is what you're saying. But I think, I didn't realize this was. But beyond the administrative role, there's environmental advocacy and awareness of what additional impervious area could do to the city and so forth. So I was just wondering what the department thought about the proposed changes in zoning.
Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Great, thank you all.
Thank you. Others? Commissioners?
We're trying to,
Did you want to say anything? Sorry.
I was just trying to point out in this particular case, we're trying to point out both sides of the argument. So that there, yeah.